everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Debt Collection 101 here on R But You. Joined today by Tracy, co-host. So thanks so much for Tracy joining me. And then also we have a awesome guest who, was very hard scheduling this because, she's on the other side of the country. But Kaitlyn, who is a Market Research Analyst here at Arbite. Kaitlyn, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me this morning. This is my first episode of Debt Collection 101, so very excited to be here. As you had mentioned, I work remotely out here in Arizona. I've been with Arbite for about 2 years now, and I do market research here. My role really entails just talking to agency owners and understanding what people's problems are that they're facing in terms of texting, calling, just anything that they're doing in their operations, and listening to those problems to help solve them in the future.
Awesome. Thanks. And today we're going to be talking about understanding and strategizing for generational communication preferences. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. What is your preferred communication method?
So for me, it's really a mix between email and text. If something's quick, it can be answered over text. I absolutely love that, especially from a business communication. If it's a little longer, of course, email is great. Really, if I can avoid getting on the phone with a business, that's ideal for me. So I'm a big fan of those quick back and forth communications.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Kaitlyn. Like, everyone always says email's dead, but I love getting emails. So, that's the first place I go to look for information. If I have a bill coming up or anything like that, I always check my email. I hate talking to people on the phone. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I'm the same way. So I have a car warranty that's they've been calling me about for months, and I've never answered the phone or returned the call. And finally, they texted me 2 days ago, and I responded to text, and it was just, I don't know, it's so much more convenient because you can just do it on your own terms. It's not like, I can text back for 5 seconds and I could be doing other things. Whereas a phone call, it's like you have to set aside 15 minutes of your time in total. So yeah, I definitely prefer email, text, stuff like that over a phone call now.
Awesome. And I know at Arbite, internally we talk about this, and then also the larger debt collection community. We talk about how offering more communication channels is what the younger generation wants. And I think that we're all millennials. So obviously there's generations younger than us as well. And older than us. So I'm just, Kaitlyn, in your opinion, how do you think this affects the older generations?
Yeah, so I think, when we talk about texting or email and implementing those in agencies, the default thing that we always say is, oh, well, the consumer population is getting younger, so we need to accommodate those people. But I think who we kind of forget in that scenario is those older generations. When I think about my grandparents, they typically aren't calling me on the phone. If they want to get in touch with me, they'll text me or they'll send me a Facebook Messenger message. And, even when you're looking at surveys, I think I recently looked at one from ZipWhip, and 64% of people in the boomer generation were actually looking for more communication from businesses via text. So even though it's not, the default thing that when we think of boomers, we're not thinking of sending texts and emails, but they want it too. So I think it's really important for businesses when they're implementing these new communication methods to keep that in mind and not forget that, it's not just the millennials and the Zoomers or whatever we're calling them nowadays that want those communications. It's really all the generations.
I love these nicknames for these generations. It's so nice.
Now that I actually think about it, my mom's a boomer, and she, called me the other day, and she's like, I can deposit my check from my phone. And I was like, welcome to 5 years ago. But, older generations are definitely using these technologies. My mom texts me more than we talk on the phone. My grandma still talk to her on the phone, but I think it's just so much more convenient. So I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, for sure. So, when it comes to, dealing with consumers, obviously there's all these, everyone's thinking about this and how to deal with your customers, but I think you can, relate this also back to dealing with people that you work with and vendors and clients. So how can companies use this knowledge inside their organization to communicate better with them, with their staff, their team, their vendors, their customers, their clients? I guess it's not just for customers.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, here at Arbite, we have a lot of people that kind of fall into that millennial category. So internally, we don't deal with this too much, but I know a lot of the times when we're talking to clients or we're talking to other industry leaders, a lot of times they are, from other generations. And I think an important thing is really just being mindful. Just because I know that, my communication preference is texting or it's email, that's not always going to be the case for, the other person I'm talking to. So I think really just taking it from an approach of, what would this person likely find is the best communication? And, even just saying as simply as, hey, do you prefer a call? Do you prefer that I text you? Is really just a good way to go about it. Because, of course, everyone's going to have a different preference. So we always emphasize consumer preference, but I think in a business setting, dealing with other people, it's great to take their preference into consideration as well.
Yeah, I think also there's just it depends, like everyone has their preference, but then there's like preferences based on what the topic is, right? Like I like texting my obviously like that, car warranty is, I'm going to text them, but I don't think I'm going to text my doctor about like results about, if I have, I have blood work and there's some problem and he's like, oh, I'm not going to want to text back and forth about this.
Yeah.
I want to have a phone call. And I think that came up when we were talking to Tim from TrueAccord. Kind of, there's different things that maybe you want to have different communication channels for, and like some things make sense to use text, and some things might not. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex. And just having them available, right? Because I know we've experienced this with working with different vendors. Like there's a certain point where you can email, but if you're frustrated or if something needs to get resolved quickly, having the option to call or chat with somebody or do, whatever it is that you need to do is really important. So I think, it's not about like switching to email or texting, but like just including more options for people.
Right.
So that kind of brings me to my next question, which is, what industries do you think could benefit most from implementing more communication channels?
My instant answer there is I think everyone could benefit from implementing more, but I think one business model where you really look that it's a great thing to implement is anyone who's setting appointments with people. Again, we did an internal survey here, and 93% of respondents said that they wanted to receive more appointment reminders from businesses. So, of course, doctors' offices, dentist offices, but, hair salons, nail salons, all those people, I think sending out those automated reminders is a great way to just get their customers engaged with their business and making sure they're showing up on time. To take it a step further, I think if you're looking a little bit outside the box, even maybe somebody like a grocery store, texting their customers and saying, hey, we have low capacity right now in our store. It's a great time to come in with no lines. Things like that are going to be really consumer centric text messages to engage their customers and give them a great experience that they might not be able to get if they're just sending them things like mail or phone calls.
I like that idea. No lines come into the grocery store now. That's cool. But yeah, I get like the appointment reminders all the time from my barber, and like I love it. I'd forget about my appointment if I didn't. It's not something that I like put on my calendar. I guess I'm not like a huge calendar person. So those reminders are just, yeah, I need them. But so millennials were the generation hardest hit financially by COVID-19. Do you think that this will speed up the need for more communication options in the ARM industry?
I think with so many things with COVID, it's always one of those things where it's kind of up in the air and we're not sure. But COVID as a whole, I think one of the unique things that came out of it for our industry, at least, is it really did speed up the pace of technology, in my opinion. In January at the RMA, if we had stood up on a stage and said, hey, in a couple months, we're all going to be working from home, people would have thought that we were absolutely crazy. But, here it is September, and a lot of agencies are still working from home. They still have remote agents. And I think it's been really great for the industry to see that. So while, it's still kind of out to see how it affects the industry long term, I do think that it definitely has the potential to kind of speed up that flow of technology, and hopefully we'll see that reflected in terms of just other communication methods for different generations.
Definitely. We've seen that, I think, with all of our clients, like, right, we have to adapt quicker than ever before. And I think, even in industries we don't serve, it's really interesting to see. So I'm excited to see what happens in the future. One thing we've heard is that agencies mention holding back they're being held back from new streams of communication because they don't have consent to contact people in that by that channel. So do you think first party creditors have a responsibility to start asking for consent on those channels, particularly in fields where they have a younger consumer base, like such as student loans?
That's a great question. Yeah, and of course, I'm not a lawyer here, so I can't always speak to the legalities of it. But yes, to a degree, I absolutely think it makes sense for first-party creditors to, make sure that they are including those disclosures, and even better if it can be passed on directly to the third party. As you had mentioned, a big thing that comes up over and over again when we're talking to agencies is just they're not really sure of the legalities around texting. They're not really sure what that consent looks like. So I think a scenario where they're capturing it right on the first party for things like texting, for things like email, maybe even thinking into the future for social media, I think is a great idea.
I mean, as a consumer, so much more prefer that type of, it's so much less invasive, like, and just, I don't know, your phone rings and it's like, it's just so much worse, the phone call. So it's a text, it's a lot less, it doesn't feel as invasive and it's easier, I don't know. I prefer it so much. So I don't necessarily, I'm not just saying, obviously I'm biased, but I really prefer that. And I hope that that sticks. And hopefully we'll see that some stuff clarified with the ruling coming in like October or November or something from the CFPB on this stuff. But so what do you think? I mean, what do you think companies are losing out on by failing to adapt to this new communications?
Yeah, another great question. So I think, again, going back to what we were talking about with consent, all the time you'll hear businesses say, texting's risky, emailing's risky, all these things are very risky. But the one thing that businesses never talk about being risky, which in my opinion is one of the biggest risks that you can take, is not evolving your business. When you think about the scenario of from a first party creditor standpoint, you have agency A who they're just doing phone calls, maybe they're getting less right party contacts, they're not collecting as much as they can, and then you have agency B who's using all these different channels, they're collecting more. Like, which one do you think they're going to want to go with? And even just looking from it from a hiring standpoint, I mean, I know so many agencies struggle to hire employees, they struggle to retain those employees. If you have a scenario where agents are just sitting there, they're dialing for dollars all day, it's hard work to do that. On the flip side, maybe you have a scenario where they're getting to text, they're getting to email, and calling's still a part of that, but it's a smaller portion of that. Which one of those agencies would agents want to work for? So again, I just think, when we're looking at this, of course, there's always going to be a risk with texting. There's always going to be a risk with emailing. And, as we know, there's always a risk with calling. But I think one of the biggest risks that businesses take nowadays is just not evolving and falling behind.
I agree 100%. And I mean, like you mentioned earlier, with like people were forced into changing technology with COVID and everything like that. So it's for years people are like, oh, it's a risk, they can't work from home and whatnot. And sometimes we make up these excuses like of why we can't do things. But you can tell, like, I mean, obviously COVID was terrible, but when something happens and like your back was to the wall, all these agencies were still able to do it, and they were able to make it work. So it's like all along they could have been doing this type of thing, and it works great, and it would have worked great. So it's just interesting to see stuff like that happen.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen it as well with our clients. Like some of our clients, the ones that are adapting quickly, are having record months, even during a financial crisis, during a global pandemic. So it's really inspiring to see, and I'm hoping that some other agencies can see that it does work. And everything's scary when things change, but it's worth it. And I think hopefully we'll see a little bit more quick adaptation in our industry.
Yeah.
Let's
hope the government starts quickly adapting to the technology and with the regulations. That would be nice.
Yeah, definitely.
But all right. Well, is there, Kaitlyn, did you have any last words that you wanted to put out there? Or?
I guess I would just say, if you're a business, you're an agency owner, and you're on the fence about texting or emailing, you're not sure, please don't hesitate to reach out. As always, I'm not an expert on the compliance side, but we would love to talk to you more and kind of just, help you understand your options and kind of hear what problems you're facing in the industry today. So, you know where to reach us. Don't hesitate to reach out, and we'd love to talk to you.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate you being on. Hopefully we'll have you again soon. And thanks, Tracy, for co-hosting this with me. But for everyone watching, see you next time. Like, subscribe, and yeah, see ya.